You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Hello everyone, my name is Zena Lar. I am from Ouray, Colorado, and I circumnavigate the areas of California as well. And this is my room. And I like to make things. I suppose you could say I have a self-diagnosed condition called CCD. It's creative compulsive disorder, where I have to make stuff all the time and with whatever I have around me. So if it's trash or junk or things that people would normally throw away, I try to find ways to refabricate them into something useful and beautiful. I like taking stuff and doing the unexpected with it. This is an old parasol that it was at an antique store and it was falling apart. I decided that I was going to stick some lights in it because I needed a flashlight. Why have just a flashlight when you can have a lighted parasol with 100 LEDs in it? So I put this in there. I love making robots. One of my favorite things to make is robots. I love learning about kinetics, and I love gathering any kind of information on how things move and applying it to either.
Good morning. Hi, this is All Things 3D, 3D in Review for the 20th of November, 2015. If you've been watching this show, you're probably already familiar with Zena Lar. She is, I kind of covered her, gosh, I don't know, what, 6-8 months ago. And I think she gives inspiration to anybody who's a maker or a creator, full of energy. But sadly, today, she died about, actually it was in 2013, so 2 years ago. So this is the second anniversary of her death. But I don't know. She's probably the one that's given me some inspiration to start my own Kickstarter. And so I thought she'd be nice to have on and kind of bring things up a little bit. But we also got somebody else who always brings me up, and that is Fred. Hey, Fred, great Fredini. He's back with us again. 3rd week in a row. Man, this is, I mean, he's as busy or even busier than me. I'm sorry,
Hi,
Fred, I was talking.
Nice to be back, and it was great to see that video of her.
Yeah, like I said, sadly, you know, there's a whole story behind it. I'll put that in the show notes again, as well as a link to the full video. It's about 6 minutes long, but yes, very creative, a lot of energy, and you know, it's sad when people like that leave this earth so soon. But on that note, I'm going to go right into something that I have been working on, and that is, dun, da, da, dun, da, da, where is it? There it is. Let me jump to my screen. I have been working on a Kickstarter. Tendency, for whatever reason, to switch to a frame and not come back to it. So you have just listened to me talk about this and not actually see it. So sorry about that. I'll probably have to edit it in post. So if you're, actually we don't have any viewers, so it's a problem. So I'm gonna have to cut that little section out, Fred. So again, sorry to waste your time, Fred, but here we go.
What happened? You just weren't recording?
No, it's recording. The sad thing is, I don't normally use the auto switching because as soon as you raise your voice, it immediately switches to you, so it's disruptive. So I actually control it. But since I am also participating in my own show, not only being the producer, I sometimes forget that I don't switch it. So the whole time I was talking, even though I can see my screens here, the audience only saw your face during that whole.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So very quickly, audience, and like I said, you probably won't even notice this because I'll cut it out, but I'm not going to go through it again, but here's the Kickstarter that's going to be released. The problem right now is I don't have enough real images. I put some photo renders, and I guess, and I'll get right to it. Kickstarter does not allow photorealistic renders anymore. I thought in the past they had. So like these here, are, I guess, too photorealistic and give the false impression. But some of these images, like this one here, so they said either create engineering versions, which is not a problem. I can go back to this here, which I kind of like, so that it, give you a CAD drawing or actual images. In fact, they don't even like you to retouch them, which I don't know. I didn't retouch them, so I'll have to argue that. So I don't know what the issue is. Maybe they think that this doesn't really exist. However, that is not a photo retouched image. That is a real image of the product. I wave it around in my video, and again, you missed it. I'll go back to it. My little video here is, and here it is in 3D. I put a lot of effort to actually create a version that you can use in Google Cardboard. This can be moved around. So as you can see there, I've created my own little digital set that I'm working in. Plus, I have some little demos of the apps that you can actually see in 3D and move around in. Let's see if I can go to it. They're very brief. But here is OR surgery in 3D. And then MRI. Inside Van Gogh. Halloween. I have to go back on that Inside Van Gogh. Yeah, I may have to retouch that. One of the things that if you've ever worked with 3D, you got to make sure that the parallel plane stays parallel. You can offset it on each side like we have here, which is what differentiates the green and cyan. I'm sorry, the red and cyan. But you don't want the vertical plane to be adjusted. And I've noticed when watching the Van Gogh, it's a little bit off. And I don't know why that occurred, but that's just a little technical point. I kind of like this one. That's kind of fun. This is called Alps, where you can actually ski. And then and you can see the vertical offset there. That really shouldn't happen. It's better here. But yep, that's the little video. Gives you a good idea of the product itself. So hopefully you'll back it. I was going through the different pledges. There's a variety. I try to keep it low cost. Essentially, it's a plastic shell with lenses that fits over an iPhone pod, or excuse me, an Apple iPod Touch 6G. The reason I chose that is I think, one, it's not a cell phone, two, it's affordable, and three, it's in the Apple ecosystem. And even though a lot of people complain about Apple being too, what do you want to call it, iron controlled over their app system, from a family perspective, I think that's a good thing. And so this is the reason for it. Low cost, good control for family use, and very lightweight. And as I mentioned earlier, Fred, the IPD on this is made for children. If it's not the right distance between the eyes, it can create headaches and blurriness. So. And I think some of these other products who say they're for children really aren't. And I think this could lead to some issues. Plus, I found that some of them are pretty heavy. So that was my goal. Also to have this in hospitals by Christmas. So there'll be a small portion of it that will be taken out of the pledge, so that we'll be able to create these for the hospitals with my good friend, Clint Slaughter, who's a emergency physician, also the CEO of our own makerspace and his little elves. Okay. So back to the show. I apologize for not showing the audience. I'll have to cut that out. Dumb on my part. Yeah, Fred.
You might consider doing like one or two real high ticket backing things. For example, like a pack of 10 or 5, or what about like a special like day-long VR workshop with Mike Balzer, like, something where it's like $1,000 to $3,000, like, just so you have some like big ticket thing, I think would also be good, just to, you never know if you're going to catch a fish, Oh,
that's a good idea, Fred. I like the idea of maybe a discount if you buy 10 of them. Yeah. Or maybe even 100. I don't know. Yeah, I like that idea. I don't know about anybody would want to spend a day with me with VR, but I don't know. I'll think of something.
if you think about all the work that you do with hospitals and people in the medical professions, I could see a hospital backing to bring you in and do like a workshop where you're sort of explaining, you know, all the state of, you know, like what you did with your wife and how 3D is used in medical applications, and do like a workshop or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know.
No, thank you, Fred. So why don't you go ahead and let's see, what do we got next? 3D and technology. I'm going to go into that, but let's see. Hang on a second. I'm actually giving myself a little bit of dramatic light today. I didn't turn on all my studio lights. So if I look a little, do I look dark or I look okay, Fred?
You look beautiful. Marvelous, baby.
Thanks. Okay, well, let's get right into the news items. And again, we don't have any viewers, so it's not a problem. So we'll edit out the part where I'm blabbing away and all we're seeing is Fred blinking. I did that with Chris one time, and I don't know, he was picking his teeth or something. So I have to make sure that I keep ahead of my.
You picked a really lovely thumbnail for the last video that I was in.
I kind of, that was my fault. I did that because I thought it was a cool little shot of. Well, the other thing is, I hope that didn't turn people away, but you're holding that 3D print with the guy stabbing the girl, and I didn't know if that was going to create the wrong message, but some people like that. So, oh well, that's life. So, into our first item today. In 3D and technology, Make, as you're probably aware of, Fred, because you had an article with them as well, does an annual review of 3D printers. However, notice what they've called it now. They don't call them 3D printers, they call them digital fabrication shootout. So it's funny how we're getting away from the term 3D printer and into fabricators, which I think is a much better choice of words, and away from the word 3D and digital fabrication. The reason for that is that they now have grouped this into three areas. One is the standard FDM, the second is CNCs, and the third is SLA, and then they may be in a different order. So I'll get right into it.
Laser cutters too.
Yeah, but I don't know if they had a.
Yeah, I think Glowforge is in there.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Best FDM printer, no surprise here. If we had Chris on the show, he'd say, see, I told you so. And that's the Taz. And yes, Chris has talked about this over and over again. Not only do they provide an excellent printer, they're fairly open source, and they do a very good job of providing information on using their printer.
They're not fairly open source, they're totally open source.
There you go. Thank you, Fred.
Other than their smartphones, everything the company uses is open source.
So as Fred said, everything is open source. They don't really hold back on anything. They're very liberal in the information they provide, not only on their product, but how to get the best print regardless. Obviously, it works with us. The other one that I think is really interesting here that I don't have a lot of knowledge, but I think is a kind of a neat unit is Zotrax. And I'll go to that. It looks, kind of like the earlier Maker bots. It's a square unit, but it gets accolades for good prints and low cost. So I'll have to look more about it, maybe get them on the show. We've had Lozbot on a few times, so I'm not going to have them, but this is, I wouldn't say a new entry, but I've heard some news about them. The last one here is the Rostock Max. We've had them on the show. This is CNC. They've actually got a good unit. This was Chris's first. It is different from the standard Cartesian. This is based upon a Delta printer style where you have a 3-axis that move the head based upon the deltas or the angular shifts to actually position the head. So it's kind of neat. I've got a Castle Clear that works like that. I've used it on several occasions. It's neat. The big advantage of the Rostock Max is volume. So where are we at? So best value, they say the Rostock Max, it has actually gone down in price. So keep that in mind. The PrinterBot Simple and the PrinterBot Play. And here they actually have an image of it. So they're saying best for schools, the PrinterBot, low cost, but more importantly, they put some effort into ensuring that kids don't burn themselves with it. So I guess they put guards over the heating element and things like that. The point that I don't know if you notice here, it's small, but it also has a small bed. So you can't make very large object, but that's not a problem, especially in a school environment, because, you know, as you know, Fred, large volumes, long times. So in a cool school environment, you can't have something unattended for a length of time. So small items is probably the direction. Plus kids, as we're aware of, even us adults here, have a very small attention span. So we don't need to keep something printing for hours because who knows what will happen. So I think a small bed is good for kids. The other items here is the up box and the Be in School, which I'm not familiar with, but I'll get back with you. Maybe we can have them on the show as well. Most portable is the PrintBot Simple. Here it is again. It's kind of unique. I don't remember their names. I kind of put them out because I think they kind of, again, you know, we talked about Kickstarters and the way that they've had some not so promising, I'll just give it kind of a subtle name, let's just say a lot of failures. And some of those spectacular. And
Hey, Mike?
Yes.
You're doing the audio breakup thing.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that ahead of time. All right,
Hop
Fred,
out,
why don't you,
back in and just cut it out.
yeah, I'm going to cut out, but I'm going to bring this up right here. Let's talk about the Ultimaker a little bit, and then I will drop out and come back in.
Okay. Well, I can't really talk much about the Ultimaker because I don't have the picture on my screen. But let's... Well, for those of you who don't know, the Ultimaker is one of that, along with MakerBot, were really the first big consumer 3D printers out in the market. Ultimaker has stayed true to their open source roots, and they make a really great product. So it's no surprise they're at the top of the list here. They've been consistently great, and they are open source. They really have embraced the open source community. So, you know, I know they're awesome machines.
All right, I'm back.
Hey!
Am I okay now?
Sounds great.
Okay. So yeah, it appears I've got to completely close my window and get back into it. So thank you. So as Fred said, I didn't hear everything he said, but obviously Ultimaker, like the Lozbot, one of the reasons it succeeded is they are also open source. In fact, they have just released, what, about a month, 2 months ago, the full plans for creating your own extended version. Plus, they have an open source slicer that has become very popular. Not the one I use or the one that Fred uses, which is 3D Slicer, but Cura has a large following. The other cool thing is they're from the Netherlands or Europe, so they're not from the United States, and they really have an international market. My biggest problem with the Ultimaker, because I've owned 2 of them, is the cost. They're not cheap. And one of the nice things about the Lozbot, it's a little cheaper and about the same quality. The Rostock Max is, as you can, there's a reason that it's Max. It is a very large, like the Extended, it creates very tall. But the platforms are all about, so what do you want to call it? The XY is all about the same. It's the size or the Z-axis that is higher in all these. The TAS 5, on the other hand, is just a huge, that one has a large build volume.
I love the Rostock Max, and I have 2 of them, actually. I have 2 minor criticisms of the machine. One is not really a criticism, it's more just a sort of FYI thing. Because the bed on the Rostock Max is round, it's great for me if I want to print a large size version of a statue of someone. So for example, here I have a, you know, I can print these up to almost 16 inches tall. The the problem is if you have to print something square. So you still are limited to a small footprint for square items. So even though it's, I forget if it's 11 or 12 inches in diameter, the plate, but you know, it's really no more than sort of 7 inches for a square item. So it's a little bit disappointing. The major bug that I have with the Rostock Max is, mine at least has some firmware bug that if I have to change filament halfway through a print, the print head doesn't realign. So if I'm doing a massive print, I always have to use a brand new roll of filament. And that's a problem that I've had. And John Ollie says that they fixed this bug in the Orion, but they never fixed it in the Rostock Max. So anyway, that's the one issue I have with that machine, even though I love it. And I have put a lot of it. I can't remember how many. I think I've done over 30,000 meters of filament through my.
Wow.
So.
Well, I don't actually own any of the Rostock, but I do own their parts. In fact, their extruder, if you're obviously you're aware of it, because of the design, they have to use the geez, what's the name of it? A Bowden extruder, which means you have to have the actual stepper motor away from the filament. A direct drive like a Maker box or the Maker gear, or even those are the two, or the load spot. It's all on the head itself. So you have to provide a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ultimaker is also a Bowden extruder as well, right? Yes,
exactly. So I have some reservations with them, but the reason I'm bringing it up is that the extruder that CNC, which is the same one that's used in the Rostock Mat, is an excellent extruder. I think it works very well. There's a guy out of Sweden, I think, who's got a version that I want to get my hands on that uses a double knurled system to provide more pressure against the filament, more consistent contact. Currently, most of the I've had him on the show, and I really like it. And I was supposed to get one, and it just kind of fell through the cracks. But I still want to get one of those. But back to the Bowden, the problem is you have to apply pressure. Gosh, close to almost 2 feet from the end of the extruder. So the pressure has to be high at the point of movement, and the pathway has to be clear. The nozzle has to be working perfectly. At least my earlier version of the Ultimaker, I got a lot of jams, had problems switching materials, found out I normally had to remove the material between builds. They've since then gone to a different hot end on their particular printers, and a lot of that has changed. But it is frustrating, and I have done a few things just like the Rostock. I put the extruder above, not on the bottom like some other Delta printers were doing. So that way you're using gravity to help you, putting the spool above instead of below it, which also interacts with the forces. And the other thing that I don't know if they show it here, I don't let my cables droop. I created an elastic band system that keeps all my cables elevated so that I don't have these little kinks, not necessarily kinks, but these areas, because all this creates angular, what do you want to call it, resistance.
Right.
So the what do you call it? The straighter the path, the better. And so that's why I put elastic bands. The sad thing is, before I went to silicone, all the rubber ones, it deteriorated too quickly and would snap. It's not like there was a lot of resistance, but after a month, I'd have to change them out. But now I've gone to a silicone elastic, and they've lasted for about 6 months. So just a tip.
I have a little rig that I did with bungee cords to keep the cable in the middle. Periodically, I've had issues where that cable will actually catch one of the carriages and pull it off its print path. Until I did that. Are you familiar with the flying extruder?
I am not. Got a link to that, Fred?
Hold on, let me see if I can find it quick. Basically, what people have been doing, flying extruder. extruder. What people have been doing, and there's actually a Delta printer. Here, I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, these guys don't have pictures of it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just seeing if I can find a video of this thing in action.
Hang on a minute, Fred. Were you able to find it?
Yeah, here, this is, here, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
I can. I see.
Okay.
See
So
me.
this is, there's a company called Trick Laser based out in Indiana right near where Rostock Max is from. And this guy has been doing these extruders where he basically makes the world's shortest Bowden tube. So it's suspended just above the extruder, if you can see this image.
Mm-hmm.
So the extruder is just hanging in space from little elastic bands, and there's no weight on the carriage, and you get, the big problem with Bowden is that you have to do retractions.
Right.
So in this one, the Bowden tube is just this little tiny little thing. Now there's an Italian company that's also making a Delta machine now. They were big in Maker Faire in New York this year, and they also are doing this, and this is apparently a thing with, here's another image of one. So see, this is an old style extruder, the way the gearing is done, but you suspend the Bowden filament drive in the air so that it's very short. And people are doing this, and they get a lot of better results. So that's called the flying extruder, and we're seeing that a lot. The Italian company making Delta machines has this, and they have a beautiful machine.
Yeah, I think I've seen that before. Hey, Fred, are you? Do you have headsets?
No.
Okay. I'm getting some feedback through your speaker. In the future, when you come on, if you put on some headset, it prevents the feedback. Google knows. Well, I haven't noticed it until now, but I'm getting feedback now.
Okay, I can.
That's fine. Normally, what I do is I just remove one of my. Okay, well, you've got some there, so if you can go ahead. Well, great news there. And yes, this is a problem I've had with the Bowden extruder, and obviously other people have as well. I have thought of with my Ultimaker of doing the same thing, creating like a device that goes on top so that the extruder is not on the bottom of the path, but at the top of the path. And just, you know, if you look at the picture behind me here, here's your tube, and just have an extension coming up in the Bowden extruder up here instead of down way down here in the bottom. And plus their spool sits back here, so you've got this path that comes underneath and then up, so it's just a lot of angular resistance that could be avoided, and I can see why most people are trying to do that, and it's a conclusion that I've come to as well. All right, well, let's move on. Fred, we've gone through this quickly. CNC machines, you know, I'm a big fan of these now that I've had an opportunity to do additive printing. I want to do some subtractive, and I actually met the ShopBot when I was at the Maker Faire in San Mateo. Nice bunch of guys, and they've got a couple of others here. Then the desktop mill. I think I saw this one as well, the Nomad 883. So if you wanted to get into something different that you need some subtractive. Some of these can actually do lightweight aluminum. I don't think anything heavier than that. Obviously plastics and wood. And then finally, the SLA. Geez, there's not a lot here, but I do want to give a shout out. One, obviously, it's the Form 2. I have an SLA, I have the original. I've gotten some great SLA prints from it. I've heard great things about this new unit. They've really refined it. In fact, Chris has ordered one, so hopefully he'll go on the show when he gets his and talk about it. But this little guy here, the little RP, I'm going to give a shout out because this is from Brad Hill. He's a guy that we've had on the show several times, actually been not only a guest crasher, but a side host, let's call him that, co-host on the show. And he created this, gosh, back in August? When was his Kickstarter? It's been some time now, but it's a very simple design. It comes as a kit and also fully assembled. You have to supply your own DLP projector, but the prints that he's gotten out of this thing, let's look at the gallery here, are just astounding. Of course, because it's a little RP, it doesn't create that large of prints, but the prints that it creates just have so much detail. So if you're looking for something, I don't know what his price is right now. Let's see what his store, but I do believe, come on, he doesn't have, oh, actually, here we go. So $5.99 for the deluxe kit, the Maker Tilt kit, which he's just added to it. So about $5.99, and then you have to throw in the DLP projector, which you can get for about $400. So about $1,000, you can have an excellent SLA printer. So if you don't have the money for a $3,500 or $30,000 Form 1, I totally agree with Make for choosing this as an SLA alternative. And plus, I know Brad, he's a great guy, and he's had a lot of good advice. If you go back to our holiday specials last year, he gives you a lot of tips on using his printer. And I think that was done in also November or December timeframe. So, little RP. So back to the winners, that's about it. As mentioned, they call it digital fabrication now because they've made it more inclusive of multiple fabricating devices. And I have to agree, their selections are spot on. Fred, you want to add anything before we move on?
I think they also made there's some, for the CNC, the X-Carve from Inventables did really well, didn't it? I just built one of those. I'm in the final process of getting it all dialed in. If you scroll up to the CNC, didn't Inventables, Inventables X-Carve, I think, did really well in here as well, didn't it?
Actually, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that's under the large format CNC. And it comes in either a ½ meter or a meter square carve area, which I built the big one thinking I should have it bigger, but man, is that thing big. It's just in terms of my house, I don't have a spot for it, but
you have to mount it on the wall.
Somebody did one that lowered from pulleys from the ceiling.
Oh, how funny. Yeah, I met them as well. But like, the cool thing is a lot of these designs look very simplistic, but I guess the point is sometimes simple is the best. It's a single, just essentially 2-axis, right? 3-axis. Essentially your X, Y, and then a retractor stepper motor for the actual.
It's very
CNC.
similar to the Shapeco. The engineer at Inventables, Bart Dring, is a friend of mine, and he's the inventor of Maker Slides. So the idea is that it's structural extruded aluminum that also has a rail on it rather than you have to bolt a rail onto it. So it's a really simple building system. And the thing that they're doing that's really great that not a lot of other people are doing is they're really focusing on usable software for CNC, which right now, that's the big problem with CNC, is that it doesn't it's not so conducive to usability on the software side. So you got a little friend there.
My little furry assistant, he's been a little attached lately. So you'll have to excuse him. Say hi, Ridley. His last name's Scott, Ridley Scott.
Nice.
On Facebook. Oh, well. Yeah, it's a really interesting unit. As I said, again, great people behind it. And so you give it a thumbs up, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, I haven't quite gotten it working. I have a little bit more wiring work to do, but I had one test drive and I was getting some slippage. So I got to get that settled, but very much looking forward to it.
Okay, well, let's move on to 3D in medicine, because we've spent a lot of time in the make area. And for those of you, this might be a little hard on the eyes, but I think it's very important to show what this individual looked like before all the work was done. So again, forewarned. So again, this is 3D Systems, who's been doing a bang-up job of identifying how their software and systems are being used in medicine. This is a firefighter who was in a terrible accident in Mississippi, literally lost his nose, ears, and part of his jaw, and has gone through, obviously, was it 70 surgeries since then? And because of this, the process is, obviously very laborious, but the important thing here is that here's the before and then the after. Essentially, he looks very reasonable, but this is the amount of work that they did. It was a 26-hour surgery, and they literally rebuilt using 3D construction. They did some visualization to know what areas that they were going to supplant with new muscular and skeletal grafts from a donor. And then here's an image of the final results. So again, hats off. I think of 3D as a tool. As you know, I've said it several times before, I've done some 3D printing myself for the neurosurgeon in UPMC. I can see the benefits of it, and however, to actually see it being applied to allow for the reconstruction and visualization, again, back to the original image, huge dramatic difference between the before and after. So what we can do now with this technology, I think, is amazing. And the more and more it gets in the hands of physicians, surgeons, I think, or even orthopedic surgeons, I think is going to be a huge win for us, and hopefully lower the cost of surgeries, and more importantly, create dramatic results like we see here. Fred, you want to add anything to this?
No, I mean, I think there's really exciting stuff happening in this area, and it's kind of shocking, but wow, what a new life this has given this guy. So I hope he enjoys his new face.
Yeah, it's kind of a little scary. My VR demo called OR Surgery is about a guy named Mike who's getting a face transplant. So a little irony there. Oh, well, so let's go on. Fred, you've got an item in this area. You want to jump on it?
Do I?
I think you do.
I don't think I do.
I don't. Wasn't it in 3D medicine? Or oh, no. Nervously. Okay. Sorry. My mistake. So let's jump into the next item, which is I'm going to talk about software. And I actually have a little demo video to run, so I'll go ahead and do that. I personally don't have any experience with this particular product. Fred?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I turned down my own voice. So are you familiar with this software?
No, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Oh, okay. This is a product. The demo there was it's a product from Materialize, which essentially allows anybody who's working with SLA or FDM to do a lot of things that you can do with NetFab. The only problem with is that it's pretty expensive, but if you need a workhorse for converting CAD drawings and not STL, STLs, and be able to manipulate them, clean them up, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the go-to product. I've worked with it a little bit about 2 years ago, and found it to be really nice. Again, the sad thing is it's very expensive, but they just came out with a new version. And if you're interested in doing this for a living, it might be something to look at. Obviously, you're going to have to do a lot of fixing in order to afford it, in my opinion, but just a little shout out. So you're not familiar with it, huh, Fred?
No, I'm sorry. I too little time.
Yeah, well, I was looking for packages and I had contacted them, so I did get a chance to play with it. I too can't afford something like that. So I don't know. Are you familiar with this product? This Poser.
God, I can't even believe they still make this program.
Actually,
This thing, I know this program from over 20 years ago. I would say it's like 25 years ago.
Well, Poser's still around. They now just released Poser Pro 11, and I use the program. Their render is very easy to work with, and if you've had to design models, one of the things that I was wanting to do is scan people's heads and then create models based upon open source frames that work within the Poser environment, so you could manipulate them and then send them out. So some of the cool features of last year's version, which are still included in this, is that they have created the ability to, because I don't know if if you've worked with Poser, they have clothing and so forth. So it's like a dress-up doll type thing. But they now have tools in there to consolidate the mesh into one unit, and then you just clean it up in NetFab or some other tool. So it's very easy to attach parts. You can, as they're showing there, you can morph the object. There's a ton of content. But the important thing to remember is that this contact is normally made by other people, which means they have the rights to it. So keep that in mind if you're going to use a program like this in your business to create 3D prints of people. If you want to create a lot of this stuff is still, what's the word I'm looking for?
Proprietary.
Proprietary, but more importantly, I mean, it's works of arts by other people, so you need to honor that, make sure you get the permission to use their stuff, and make sure that the models themselves can be utilized outside of the Poser. I know that Daz 3D, which is kind of their competitor, allows you to use your models to render things in art, like what you're seeing here, but will not allow you to use their models to create 3D prints unless you get permission, and normally that means you have to buy the rights to it, which could be expensive. But if you're interested in a program to get started in 3D, as Fred identified, this thing has been around forever. They were purchased by Smith Micro, 2 or 3 years ago. The sad thing is their upgrade prices are a little steep. So I don't know if I'll be upgrading to the next version. One of the things that I've liked in the past, and actually have an alternative, what they call a physical renderer, but that's now included in it. But the price of the one that you can plug in is reasonably priced, so I don't know if that's worth it. Lots of features. If you've never used this application, you can buy it, the Pro version, for $349. I think the standard version is like $100. Well worth it if you want to get your feet wet into 3D. It's a lot of fun, a lot of stuff out there. It's kind of gotten a bad rep. Some people have been using it to create a lot of, what do you want to call it, virtual pornography. But from that, yeah, I've also seen, it's funny, you can see a lot of the artwork done with Poser and Popular Science and a few other things. So there you go. If you're interested in something like that, I think it's a cool tool. On that note, let's see if I've got it here. Geez, here it is. Are you familiar with this product? SketchUp.
I have it open on my machine, in fact.
So SketchUp just also got a new update. They are now at what version?
2016.
2016, so they've gone by annual upgrades. I used this in the past. As mentioned before, I worked with an architectural urban planning, what they call a multidiscipline firm, for about 10 years. And this was the go-to product by the architect, which is funny because some of the principals of the company were really pushing AutoCAD, but we had some architects that just clung to this. We finally had to buy multiple licenses for this application. Architects love it. It's easy to create products in it. One of the reasons I'm bringing it up is that you can get a free actually it's built into the Pro version, but you can get a free STL export for it. So you can take these models and convert them into STLs and print them if you want to. There's a ton of things in their library, as you can see in this image here. Plus, like I said, it's fairly easy to work with. I played with it, did a few tutorials, and made my own house in it. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So what is your thoughts?
I love SketchUp. I think it's so fast and easy. Anytime I have to do something mechanical, I guess I would use it where you probably are using Fusion 360. I'm not doing enough. I would like to maybe learn Fusion 360, but I love this program, and I use it. Right now I'm working on the master plan for Luna Park using it, and then I'll go in and kind of tweak those buildings to get more detail in them outside of SketchUp. But what's great is it works with Google Earth, so you can actually grab a screenshot of a piece of land and bring it in and build buildings to scale. And I use it for anything mechanical. I love it.
So just FYI, for those of you who have heard of SketchUp, it used to be owned by Google. It was used, as Fred alluded to, with Google Earth, so that you could actually populate Google Earth or grab areas of Google Earth and then populate it with objects from SketchUp. It is now owned by a company called Trimble. Trimble is known for their surveying tools, and actually they have a few laser scanners as well, big ones, 3D laser scanners. So it's a good match for them. I'm glad that they're continuing to support it. They have a free version as well as a pro version. I think the pro version is about $500, but if you want to get your feet wet in another cool little program, if you're not familiar with it, head out to it and try it out. And they also have a 30-day demo for their pro version. All right, well, that's about it for the software. Fred, you've got an item in this category, and then we'll move on to the next one.